Today is January 13th. Welcome to another episode of the Big Book Daily. My name is Rob. I'm an alcoholic, your friend here in the lifeboat of recovery as we are journeying through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 and 12. Today we'll be reading Chapter 3, More About Alcoholism, pages 37 through 42, and the 12 and 12, Chapter 2, Step 2, pages 29 through 30. So, let's get into the Big Book. So, quick recap. In the last story, we got this illustration of this man who eventually gives in to alcohol. The insanity starts to take over. Suddenly the thought crossed my mind that if I were to put an ounce of whiskey in my milk, it couldn't hurt me on a full stomach. So there we see the obsession of the mind. And then as soon as he has that alcohol, the allergy of the body kicks in. And we're going to see some more illustrations today. And here we are on page 37. You may think this an extreme case. To us, it is not far-fetched, for this kind of thinking has been characteristic of every single one of us. We have sometimes reflected more than Jim did upon the consequences. But there was always the curious mental phenomenon that parallel with our sound reasoning, there inevitably ran some insanely trivial excuse for taking the first drink. Our sound reasoning failed to hold us in check. The insane idea won out. Next day, we would ask ourselves in all earnestness and sincerity, how could it have happened? In some circumstances, we have gone out deliberately to get drunk, feeling ourselves justified by nervousness, anger, worry, depression, jealousy, or the like. But even in this type of beginning, we are obliged to admit that our justification for a spree was insanely insufficient in light of what always happened. We now see that when we began to drink deliberately, instead of casually, there was little serious or effective thought during the period of premeditation of what the terrific consequences might be. Our behavior is absurd and as incomprehensible with respect to the first drink as that of an individual with a passion, say, for jaywalking. He gets a thrill out of skipping in front of fast-moving vehicles. He enjoys himself for a few years in spite of friendly warnings. Up to this point, you'll label him as a foolish chap, having queer ideas for fun. Luck then deserts him, and he is slightly injured several times in succession. You would expect him, if you were normal, to cut it out. Presently, he's hit again, and this time has a fractured skull. Within a week after leaving the hospital, a fast-moving trolley car breaks his arm. He tells you that he has decided to stop jaywalking for good. But, in a few weeks, he breaks both legs. On through the years, this conduct continues, accompanied by his continual promises to be careful or to keep off the streets altogether. Finally, he can see no longer work. His wife gets a divorce, and he is held up to ridicule. He tries every known means to get the jaywalking idea out of his head. He shuts himself up in an asylum, hoping to mend his ways. But the day he comes out, he races in front of the fire engine, which breaks his back. Such a man would be crazy, wouldn't he? You may think our illustration is too ridiculous, but is it? We, who have been through the ringer, have to admit that if we substituted alcoholism for jaywalking, the illustration would fit us exactly. However intelligent we may be in other respects, where alcohol has been involved, we've been strangely insane. It's strong language, but isn't it true? Some of you are thinking, yes, what you tell us is true, but it doesn't fully apply. We admit that we have some of these symptoms, but we have not gone to the extremes as you fellas did, nor are we likely to, for we understand ourselves so well after what you've told us that such things cannot happen again. We've not lost everything in life through drinking, and we certainly do not intend to. Thanks for the information. That may be true of certain non-alcoholic people who, though drinking foolishly and heavily at the present time, are able to stop or moderate because their brains and bodies have not been damaged as ours were. But the actual or potential alcoholic, with hardly an exception, will be absolutely unable to stop drinking on the basis of self-knowledge. This is a point we wish to emphasize and re-emphasize, to smash home upon our alcoholic readers as it has been revealed to us out of bitter experience. Let us take another illustration. Fred is a partner in a well-known accounting firm. His income is good, he has a fine home, is happily married, and the father of promising children of college age. He has so attractive a personality that he makes friends with everyone. If ever there was a successful businessman, it is Fred. To all appearance, he's a stable, well-balanced individual. It was his first experience of this kind, and he was much ashamed of it. Far from admitting he was an alcoholic, he told himself that he came to the hospital to rest his nerves. The doctor intimated strongly that he might be worse than he realized. For a few days, he was depressed about his condition, and he made up his mind to quit drinking altogether. It never occurred to him that perhaps he could not do so, in spite of his character and standing. Fred would not believe himself an alcoholic, much less accept a spiritual remedy for his problem. We told him what we knew about alcoholism. He was interested and conceded that he had some of the symptoms, but he was a long way from admitting that he could do nothing about it himself. He was positive that his humiliating experience, plus the knowledge that he had acquired, would keep him sober the rest of his life, that self-knowledge would fix it. We heard no more of Fred for a while. One day we were told he was back in the hospital. This time he was quite shaky. He soon indicated that he was anxious to see us. The story that he told is most instructive, for here was a chap absolutely convinced that he had to stop drinking, who had no excuse for drinking, who exhibited splendid judgment and determination in all other concerns, yet was flat on his back nevertheless. Let him tell you about it. I was much impressed with what you fellows said about alcoholism, and I frankly did not believe it would be possible for me to drink again. I rather appreciated your ideas about the subtle insanity which precedes the first drink, but I was confident it could not happen to me after what I had learned. I reasoned that I was not so far advanced as most of you fellows, that I had been usually successful in licking my other personal problems, and that I would therefore be successful where you men failed. I felt that I had every right to be self-confident, that it would only be a matter of exercising my willpower and keeping on guard. In this frame of mind, I went about my business, and for a time all was well. I had no trouble refusing drinks, and began to wonder if I had not been making too hard work of a simple matter. One day I went to Washington to present some accounting evidence to a government bureau. I had been out of town before during this particular dry spell, so there was nothing new about that. Physically, I felt fine. Neither did I have any pressing problems or worries. My business came off well. I was pleased and knew that my partners would be too. It was the end of a perfect day, not a cloud on the horizon. I went to my hotel and leisurely dressed for dinner. And as I crossed the threshold of the dining room, the thought came to my mind that it'd be nice to have a couple of cocktails with dinner. That was all. Nothing more. I ordered a cocktail and my meal. Then I ordered another cocktail. After dinner, I decided to take a walk. When I returned to the hotel, it struck me that a highball would be fine before going to bed. So I stepped into the bar and had one. I remember having several more that night and plenty next morning. I have a shadowy recollection of being in an airplane bound for New York and finding a friendly taxicab driver at the landing field instead of my wife. The driver escorted me about for several days. I know little of where I went or what I said or did. Then came the hospital with unbearable mental and physical suffering. As soon as I regained my ability to think, I went carefully over that evening in Washington. Not only had I been off guard, I had made no fight whatever against the first drink. This time, I had not thought of the consequences at all. I had commenced to drink as carelessly as though the cocktails were ginger ale. I now remembered what my alcoholic friends had told me, how they prophesied that if I had an alcoholic mind, the time and place would come, and I would drink again. They said that though I did raise a defense, it would one day give way before some trivial reason for having a drink. Well, just that did happen, and more. For what I had learned of alcoholism did not occur to me at all. I knew from that moment that I had an alcoholic mind. I saw that willpower and self-knowledge would not help in those strange mental blank spots. I had never been able to understand people who said that a problem had them hopelessly defeated. I knew then, and it was a crushing blow. All right, guys, so that is the end of the Big Book today. That is page 42, the end of the first paragraph. Pretty interesting illustrations between the jaywalker and the insanity of that. But if you replace that with alcoholism, that would describe us to a T, most of us. And then, once again, this very educated businessman, shrewd businessman, Fred, who, once again, the insanity takes over, not thinking about the consequences, whatever. All right, moving on over to the 12 and 12. We're on step 2. And if you recall, in this demonstration between a sponsor and a sponsee, his sponsor is just urging his sponsee to keep an open mind. So we'll begin on page 29. As material success founded upon no more than these ordinary attributes began to come to us, we felt that we were winning at the game of life. This was exhilarating and it made us happy. Why should we be bothered with theological abstractions and religious duties, or with the state of our souls here or hereafter? The here and now was good enough for us. The will to win would carry us through. But then the alcohol began to have its way with us. Finally, when all of our scorecards read 0, we saw that one more strike would put us out of the game forever. We had to look at our lost faith. It was in AA that we rediscovered it, and so can you. Now we've come to another kind of problem, the intellectually self-sufficient man or woman. To these, many AAs can say, yes, we were like you, far too smart for our own good. We loved to have people call us precocious. We used our education to blow ourselves up into prideful balloons, though we were careful to hide this from others. Secretly, we felt that we could float above the rest of the folks on our brain power alone. Scientific progress told us that there was nothing man couldn't do. Knowledge was all-powerful. Intellect could conquer nature. Since we were brighter than most folks, so we thought, the spoils of victory would be ours for the thinking. The God of intellect displaced the God of our fathers. But again, John Barleycorn had other ideas. We who had won so handsomely in a walk turned into all-time losers. We saw that we had to reconsider or die. We found many in AA who once thought as we did. They helped us to get down to our right size. By their example, they showed us that humility and intellect could be compatible, provided that we place humility first. When we began to do that, we received the gift of faith, a faith which works. This faith is for you too. All right, so that wraps up our reading. We left off on page 30 of the 12 and 12. This is midway through step 2 here. One thing that just jumps out to me real quick is the phrase, just be teachable. So if you keep an open mind, you're open to new ideas based on maybe the 12 steps, based on what others who've experienced alcoholism, based on what they have to say. Remain teachable. One of the people in my circle always tries to remind me of that. And it's a powerful reminder that we always have the ability to learn more and realize we don't have it all figured out. I think that's just a powerful reminder today. So guys, we will be back here again tomorrow, working our way through more about alcoholism and our way through step 2 as well. As always, it is an honor to be here with you today in the Lifeboat of Recovery, and I hope you have a wonderful and blessed day. See you all tomorrow.